Whoa, shit. Almost dropped the chicken. Okay. So, welcome to the Chris Spangle Show. I am cooking a whole chicken. I'll post a picture of this beauty to my Facebook page. Just trying to keep this fun, light, and interesting for myself. I don't know if this is going to sound good to any of you people. Let me go in and turn off the air conditioning. All right, welcome to the Chris Spangle Show. Thanks for joining me here. I am in my backyard about to make a whole ass chicken. I've been wanting to do a nice little series where I just sit and talk on my front porch, the front porch series. I have a nice front porch. Maybe have Harry over, just talk about barbecuing. Maybe ask him to change my brakes for me since he's a real man. Just trying to keep it light and fun and interesting for myself, because I'm not going to lie to you, after 10 years of podcasting about libertarian stuff, I'm a little bored with it. And it's not that I'm not a libertarian anymore. I certainly am. It's just that I just don't think I care. And I don't know if that's coming across. I'm really glad that we found Young Voices, which is like this great organization of young writers that are like me 15, 20 years ago, who are just sort of young and hungry and want to get out there and make a difference in the world and think that they can change things. And they're fools. But they're all very, very smart people and have a lot of insight on a lot of our topics that we talk about that we want to bring up. Okay, let me see. I got a big green egg. See, is the chicken touching? Ooh, I think the chicken is touching the top of the grill. That's not good. All right, scooch this back. I got hickory, mesquite, and pecan. The big green egg here. All right, it is not touching it. If you don't know what the big green egg is, it's like this. It's the perfect grill. For years, I suffered at the jokes of the electric grill, which was the only type of grill in my apartment. They thought they were being cagey by banning propane and gas grills, but electric was not written into it, so I was able to have an electric grill. And then work, for my wedding present, gave me a big green egg. I know you're hungry, sweetheart. I'm making a chicken. Sorry, I'm just washing my hands. You know, you got to keep it clean. Touching raw chicken, salmonella. Next thing you know, you're in the bathroom, and then you've got an infected hair. Sometimes you just want a whole ass chicken, and I've been growing a garden, which if you're a Patreon, you got to see the video of it. And on this one, I grew some rosemary and lemon thyme and sage. Put it up the bird's behind and all over the bird. And now we're at 400 degrees just smoking it. So, again, the reason I'm not in my room, in my studio, in 84 degree weather at 7:30 at night is that it's really nice out.
Hey, you guys about to eat, or?
Yeah.
Okay. We're walking down to the park with the kids.
Okay, I'll let them know. Okay.
I'll be there for a little bit.
She's real tired today. She goes, do you want to play with Mila? And she goes, I will after I nap after my other nap. So she...
If you're playing in 2 naps, that's a good thing.
Thanks.
I'll just give you a heads up.
Okay.
All right, man, we'll see you.
Welcome to the Chris Spangle Show. Thank you so much for joining me here on this podcast. I am so glad to be joining you from my backyard. I have decided that I might be trying out a little series here on the show, the Front Porch series, where I just kind of sit and monologue a little bit, and it's a little more casual, and I am not in my office because it's 84 degrees out. It's perfect. It's hot. I'm smoking a chicken. I almost dropped it, as you heard in the open here, and put it into the big green egg. I used to have the electric grill. I always got made fun of for the electric grill, but now I have a big green egg, so I have grill supremacy here on the podcast network. As you can hear, I'm outside. That is a helicopter. And I've really tried to professionalize the podcast and do a lot of video and be consistent, and I thought we've done a good job of that. There's been a lot of episodes this year compared to the past. But I want to kind of do some things that are a little more casual, maybe even have Harry over, barbecue with me, teach him a little thing or two, and talk about things in a little bit more of a relaxed manner than that of a show, where I'm just sitting and talking to you. I got a lot of great feedback on the show where just kind of talked about my feelings about how the state of the world and where we're at and where we're kind of moving with the show. And, I thought the first one would be good if I started with abortion. Now, we have in the 1,200 episodes of We Are Libertarians never done an episode on abortion. And that's going to change over the next week, 2, 3. And it's going to reflect a little bit of a different... All right. The reason I'm doing it this way is I want to tell you what I think about abortion. All right. Not that I think you care or that it might change your mind, but you do listen to me because you want to know what I think. And so I'm going to tell you. But in the coming episodes, I'm going to talk with, pro-choice people who have examined the law, people like that, Reinhold, or Sarah Brady, who have very strong opinions that are different than mine on some of this stuff, but have an interesting point of view nonetheless. I want to talk to, I don't want to reveal my guests because I don't know if I can book them yet. I have not yet sat down and emailed them, but I really felt like I needed to address this because it's so monumental. And I wanted to do it in a way that was a little more personal and casual. And I just don't want to be in my office. I've been in there since 6 a.m. working. It's 7:30. Like I said, it's nice out. It's a little more casual. So I'll start back in 2004. And I want to give my condolences to the family of Andrew Lee and talk radio show host John Justice, who alerted me this week that one of my mentors passed away. His name was Andrew Lee, or Drew Lee, as he was known in Minneapolis. He worked here in Indianapolis at Intercom at WXNT and was the program director. And I was a pizza delivery guy, and I would write into the radio station pissed off about how the Indianapolis Indians were interrupting Michael Savage, which tells you how Republican I was at the time. I was just... his one sentence reply to me still makes me laugh, which was, "Do you make your own dough?" Which was such a weird reply to a listener complaint. And I said, no. He said, I grew up in Gainesville. I was a pizza delivery guy. We made our own dough. How can you call yourself a real pizza place if you don't make your dough? I'm sorry, the Indians pay us a lot of money to carry their games, and so we have to interrupt it for the Michael Savage stuff. Then I wrote back and asked, do you have internships? And I was in my sophomore year of college, which you usually can't get an internship till junior year, senior year. And he said, if you go talk to your college and see if you can, then yeah, I'll give you an internship. Because I had always wanted to work in radio. I'm literally working at my dream job since I was 8 years old, or maybe even younger, for Bob and Tom during the day. And it all started because of that email. And Andrew let me run the board, taught me every aspect of the radio business, and then gave me a C+ on my internship. But he still hired me. And I was a Saturday show producer, backup morning show producer for holidays. Ended up working as Abdul's producer. But Drew passed away this past 2 days ago. It's been really heavy on my heart, and I'll be honest, it's been a really grievous weekend for a lot of people, including me. And so Andrew's passing, I wanted to note because I would not be in the position I'm in if it had not been for Andrew. Andrew is the guy that I went to in 2007 and said, we really should be podcasting this. Maybe 2006. I was like, podcasting is the future. It's perfect for talk radio. Abdul has no reach on the signal. Let's put him up as a podcast. And he said, that's a stupid idea. No one will ever listen to that, and no one knows how to get to it, and we would never want to compete with our sponsors. Now radio and podcasting are besties. Ben Shapiro single-handedly changed Westwood One, the company that my show is attached to. Every radio personality now has to have a podcast. But at the time, he made the right call. We ended up podcasting in 2000, a year later, I think. And that was when I started my podcasting career with Abdul. I've got all that stuff up on my SoundCloud. You can go listen to me make fun of Ron Paul and be an idiot. I listen to that stuff and I'm so embarrassed. As a parting gift, Andrew gave me an hour of airtime. Me and Rob Green co-hosted it. Rob's now a state rep. Great guy. So, as a radio show producer in a local market, the one thing you did not talk about was abortion. And the reason is that it was too divisive. I was saying to Reagan the other day, it is really hard to say to someone who is her age, 28, who doesn't really remember the pre-9/11 era, the person who really doesn't kind of remember pre-2008 crash, like, it is hard to explain what politics is like before the internet and social media. It was so much slower. It's like in 2007, somebody just put a brick on the gas pedal and has never let off. And I don't think they're ever going to. Politics moves at an exhausting pace. And I mean, the people who live in my neighborhood here in Fall Creek Place, man, they can't buy signs and flags fast enough to put up the virtue signal, what they believe. I have not seen any Roe v. Wade stuff, but here in Pride Month, it is funny to see the different pride flag. If you have like the regular original pride flag, you are behind the times here because the person next door has like, it'll have like the one with the triangle at the end, and then the person at the next door will buy one with like a symbol, like they keep one-upping each other in their virtue signaling, which is really funny. But I will say this is the most communal neighborhood I've ever lived in, way more than the suburbs. I love living in the city. I never would have thought that, but I really, really like it, really love my neighbors. But back to politics. It was just a different time. There was one subject you couldn't have a discussion rationally about, and it was abortion. And I think I've said this before, but it is now where every discussion is at the level of intensity that the abortion discussion used to be at. And I understand why it's deeply personal. Trying to decide what to share here. I don't mind sharing most of my stuff, but I don't like sharing other people's stories. I used to be pro-choice, and then I had a very significant experience with somebody that had an abortion, and I saw the way that affected them years out. And it's why I started looking into it. And I mean, I was a pro-choice Christian even. But when you start to read into it and you see that there's brain waves and heartbeats and like movement at 8 weeks, sometimes even before the baby, even before you realize you're pregnant, and then you read the way that abortion takes place, where the speculum is basically inserted and rips the child limb from limb. or I don't know if they do saline births anymore, but they used to call them candy apple babies, where they would shoot them into saline and burn them to death. It's barbarism to me, and as a Christian, I believe that life begins at conception. It's like, if you're a Christian, it is very biblically clear that life begins at conception in so many points in the Bible. I'm not a pastor. I'm not going to do a Bible study on this at this point. I would direct you to Matt Chandler's recent sermon. My favorite pastor is Matt Chandler at the Village Church, and he spoke on it this week, called A Sober Celebration of Life. And I think if you want a religious, he doesn't spend a lot of time on it. R.C. Sproul also wrote a book on abortion that kind of talks about the theological perspective. But I don't find that to be persuasive to people outside of my circles, and it's becoming less persuasive to people in my circles. So hold on, I need to text my wife. So there's another book that's, kind of written, it's a little older, it's by Randy Alcorn. That's Why Pro-Life. I meant to get it, but it comes at he's a Christian, but it's written from a non-Christian fact-based perspective. But here's the thing about fact-based. Let's see if I can grab it here. The thing about issues like this is Randy Alcorn, the pro-life Christians' facts are going to be a lot different than the Planned Parenthood facts, and that's just what's so confusing about everything, which is why I'm going to do several different shows on this. But there are a couple things in here that I found interesting. But to finish my earlier point, it's just everything's an abortion topic now. So, and we'll talk about how to talk about it here in a minute. They're basically talking about the stages. So Randy Alcorn's book, is it really a human being? And has all these doctors talking about the neat beginning is at conception, and once the egg is fertilized, it has a unique DNA. The owner of Oregon's largest abortion clinic testified under oath, of course, human life begins at conception. So a lot of even pro-choice people kind of believe that. That's the hard part about it. I read a book by Eric Schonsberg. I may have him on this topic. When does life begin? Is it the heartbeat bill, where it has a heartbeat, which can be hidden? It is not by any means easily detected, especially early on. Is it when the child has the breath of life when they come out? There's some Christians that believe that as well, that the breath of the first child is the beginning of their life. And then there's the conception argument, which is what a lot of Christians and conservatives and libertarians believe. So this famous intrauterine photographer Leonard Nielsen did a photo essay on life and did a book called A Child is Born. And basically 45 days after conception, he writes, though the embryo now weighs only 1/30th of an ounce, it has all the internal organs of an adult in various stages of development. It already has a little mouth with lips, an early tongue, and buds for 20 milk teeth. Its sex and reproductive organs have begun to sprout. By 8 weeks, hands and feet are almost perfectly formed. By 9 weeks, a child will bend fingers around an object placed in the palm. Fingernails are forming and the child is sucking his thumb. The 9-week baby already has perfected a somersault, backflip, and scissor kick. By 10 weeks, it squints, swallows, and frowns. So the original Roe v. Wade case was based on a law from the 1800s, I think late 1800s. And it essentially allowed for abortion up into the quickening. And the quickening was when the child moves, essentially. There's a great podcast by Slate that I'm going to recommend called The Slow Burn. All seasons have been great. This one is on Roe v. Wade. I listened to it on the way back from Atlanta on Saturday, and honestly, I found it a little hard to listen to it. I had to turn it off because it just made me sad, but the first episode gets into Jane Roe, who was the original defendant. And so the original Florida law was written in the late 1800s and allowed for abortion, and it allowed for abortion after the quickening if it threatened the life of the mother. And I believe it's all the trigger law states. So there are certain states that upon repeal, 13 states went back to the original laws. Because what you have to understand about Roe v. Wade is that it was a fundamental change in the constitutional structure. Let me finish the life argument, then we'll talk about the constitutional part, and then we'll talk about the talking about part. So let me try to stay organized a little bit on this. So, but I thought it was interesting that, even in the late 1800s, they made exceptions for the lives of mothers. And hold on, I think somebody's coming out, and I have to explain that I'm doing a podcast, and they're going to think it's weird that I'm talking to myself. It's a Squish. She came out to say hello.
Mommy said we can play with Mila now.
Oh, well, they're down at the park, baby. Silly goose. All right, so I don't know where I was. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting point. So, the libertarian argument for abortion is all over the place, because you can have people like myself who are Christian and conservative-leaning people who are pro-life. Life begins at conception. You should not have an abortion. And then there's two different divergent paths from there. There are the people who would put the mother in jail like Jane Roe. So Jane Roe was basically found out to have had a secret abortion in Florida at around 6 months. And nobody really knows how they found out. The doctors did not tell. She would not tell who the doctors were that performed abortions. Before Roe v. Wade, doctors and nurses were typically prosecuted, not women. Red states all across. So why Roe was so different is that it was the prosecution of a mother, and she was put in jail, wrote to some abortion advocates that came to her aid, and it became a test case. Now, her court case was taken to the Florida Supreme Court and thrown out. So you could have had it in there, right? And it would have been taken care of in her state, according to pro-abortionists. But it ended up going to the Supreme Court. And this is where it gets a little bit messy, because as I've argued about abortion in the past, and I argued this about Confederate statues, the point of a constitutional republic is that you have everybody's sides represented and part of the dialogue. And part of why our country is breaking down is that it's no longer a constitutional republic, it's an oligarchy. And you no longer have all the sides represented. You have the sides of the rich being represented. In a constitutional republic, it takes something like a Confederate statue. A board or a city council will hear all the arguments, all sides will be heard, then it will be voted on by the representatives. Something like gay marriage eventually worked itself out. No matter what Justice Thomas said or didn't say, gay marriage is not, in my opinion, under threat. Obergefell is not going to fall. It was written into two of the opinions that it's not going to be challenged. Things like, I think it's Griswold was, I may get these all mixed up, but Griswold was, you've got the interracial marriage case, you've got the anal sex case, you've got the contraception case, you've got the gay marriage case, and you have Roe. which all basically liberalized public policy. And libertarians generally are for that liberalization. Okay? There's no more confused position than a pro-life libertarian, because you don't want to put people in jail. You don't want to have federal laws mandating abortion, but there's a percentage of pro-life libertarians that view this as murder. So what do you do with that, right? Where do you go with that? If you consider this murder, the murder of an innocent life, and that life has all the natural rights protections, and this is separate from religious beliefs, right? More religious people will hold this, but if it is a life deserving of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness or property, depending on how you say it, then the taking of that life is murder and is punishable by prison. Then there are the libertarians who totally disagree with that and say, you're never going to get rid of abortion. You're just going to have to live with it. It's a person's personal choice. It's their personal health care. A child doesn't have the right to essentially rent a womb. I think you'd have to look it up. Walter Block had a third way, which was evictionism, which I think maybe was the child is essentially holding the mother hostage and has the right to evict them from their womb. I don't totally remember it. Like I said, I've never really done a show on abortion because I haven't really studied a ton on it. I just have very black and white beliefs on it. And it's one of the few things that you'll find me having black and white beliefs on it. But for like my own personal moral code, and where I come down on so many of these different things is, would I do it? No. Should you be allowed to do it? That's on you, right? I think abortion is different because it is the taking of a life than maybe something like gay marriage. I just don't think there's a question that two gay people should be allowed to marry. There's no question that they should fully be able to participate in every aspect of society. It just shouldn't be a debate. And as long as marriage is a product of the state, then they should have equal access to every aspect of it. Would I have a gay marriage? No. But that's my own personal code of conduct. That's my own personal code of morality. I don't get to impress my morality on other people. Now, again, abortion is a much more difficult topic. I have people in my life that are very inconvenient and make my life marginally worse and more expensive. But I don't have the right to kill them. So what do we do with abortion moving forward? Because here's the grim reality for people who believe like I believe. And this is partly why the overturn of Roe v. Wade was grievous to me. It is going to trade one piece of human suffering for another. You're going to have tremendous, especially in red states, a tremendous amount of hurting people. Women who are in impossible situations. And I think it sort of gets spun as, you know, the number, like if you look up the Guttmacher Institute numbers, the vast majority of abortions are basically what I would term birth control abortions. It's women who are, for one reason or another, terminating the pregnancy because of financial reasons. It's just not the right stage in their life. They don't have a good relationship with the father. It doesn't fit into their future plans. There's a million different reasons. That is the majority. Then there's smaller minorities of people who have abortions because of complications or or things, what are called ectopic pregnancies. I don't consider a septic uterus, a miscarriage, an ectopic pregnancy. I don't consider those things to be abortions. I think if it's the mother's life or the child, it's the mother takes precedent for sure. And I think if you're in a red state, you really, whether you're liberal, conservative, libertarian, I think you really have to watch Republicans and fight hard to make sure that they don't pass incredibly stupid laws right now. You know, things like having to get a death certificate for miscarriages. And this is where a lot of my pro-choice friends, I totally hear what they're saying. Like, from a moral standpoint, I've given you my moral standpoint on it, okay? From a legal standpoint, it becomes so much more difficult and so much more messy. It's the invasion of privacy by local officials to figure out who had an abortion were significant before the Roe decision. And, we're not huge fans of police invasions or invasions of privacy here on the Weird Libertarians podcast network. You know, Jane Roe, if you look at her case, she basically was ratted out by someone. They came and investigated her, put her in a room, took pictures of a fetus, said that that was pictures of her fetus to mentally disturb her, to get her to confess. She gets arrested, put in jail. Then, basically, I forget, there were 3 charges, and she was only convicted on 1, and so they gave her probation, and the probation was that she had to marry her husband or leave the state. Couldn't live in the state with another woman, couldn't live by herself, couldn't live with her boyfriend. So she chose and had to leave with the state within a week. Like, there's no way to look at that as anything other than tyrannical, right? I don't know how you legislate abortion and women's health care without significant invasions of privacy, without significant civil disobedience by doctors. We already have a highly incarcerated population, and now you're going to put women and doctors and nurses in jail. I mean, how much... I don't know if I'm that much of a zealot. I know plenty of people in my world that are like, yeah, it's murder. You put them in jail. So I don't know how that works. So I want to do shows on kind of all these different topics, right? Like, I'm giving you my personal thoughts on all this. Please, I know some of you are going to lose respect. I've already gotten the emails, and you used to be my favorite pundit, but now you want to be Handmaid's Tale, and I just don't give a fuck what you think. I just don't care. Like, stick around. You're going to like me again. Wait till we get to racism, then you'll be on my side. And then you CRT people will be against me, and if you love me now. Like, I'm going to give you what I think. The people who are constantly outraged and always outraged, and I'm getting a lot of shit from libertarians, I want you people to stick around. I want you to be part of the conversation. I learn a lot from you, but your feelings exhaust me. I just don't care if you lose respect for me because I have a different opinion than you. I don't get that from my conservative friends. When I have very different opinions from them on things like racial issues or racial injustice, they sort of make fun of me. But if you have a different opinion on things like vaccine mandates or abortion, then you just cannot be friends with somebody who's on the left. And I don't like that. But I'm just going to say, like, if you've had an abortion, if you are pro-choice, you are welcome to be a listener. I love you. Jesus loves you. Like, I have no ill will. If you want to talk and have a conversation about it like an adult, then I'd love to. I'm always open to learning new things. But I guess I'm an adult and I want to have grown-up conversations, and I don't want to argue with children. Like, if you come at with me with your hurt feelings, I just don't care. Like, I'm going to look at you like I look at the 3-year-old and I say, stop it. Like, what do you know? You poop your pants. And I guess that's sort of leads. So I don't know a lot about where it goes legally. I think that's the part that we're going to dive into the most, less about the morality of it. I'm never going to change your mind if you're rabidly pro-choice. I don't think I will. I might. I don't know. But I'm not willing to try. It took me a long time to kind of get to the position that I did, and a lot of reading. And yeah, a lot of it is influenced by my Christian faith. But I think there's so many harmful things within Christianity that kind of lead. I mean, one absolutely stunning fact in this book was about Christian women. Let me see if I can find it here. Christian Perspective, page 17 of Why Pro-Life by Randy Alcorn. Some Christian readers may think this book isn't for us. It's unchurched people who are having abortions. In fact, 43% of women obtaining abortions identify themselves as Protestant. 27% identify themselves as Catholic. So 2/3 of Americans' abortions are obtained by those with Christian affiliation. 18% of all U.S. abortions are performed on women who identify themselves as born-again or evangelical Christians. That's nearly 250,000 abortions each year in Bible-believing churches. So why is that? I think purity culture has a lot to do with it. I think the 20 years that I have been a Christian, the greatest sins that you could possibly perpetrate are having sex outside of marriage, being gay while having sex outside of a marriage, or having an abortion. Not spending too much money on your hobbies, not watching too much Netflix, not ignoring your child to watch your things on your phone, not gluttony, not ignoring your family to be a workaholic, not building a comfortable life for yourself while never doing anything for other people, not serving your wife, getting a divorce, not serving your husband, not serving your children, not, just showing up to church. Like, all of these are sins. All of these are grievous sins to the Holy Spirit. The bar for adultery is incredibly high. It's looking at pornography. It's checking out the woman walking by in yoga pants. It's, I don't know what the female equivalent is of that. Make up your own adulterous sins, you Jezebels. We have put such a great emphasis on what you're not supposed to do. And I think so many Christian women have had abortions because they don't have support. Or they at least don't think that they have support. So my wife is looking at starting a local chapter of something called Embrace Grace, which is a group that they used to print up the brochures and send them to the crisis pregnancy centers and pregnancy testing centers, and it'd have pictures of fetuses and all that, and they just found that nobody picked up the brochures. So what they did is they would get the information of the women who came in for the test, and they send them a little box. And in the box is a onesie that basically says, something along the lines of the greatest gift. They give them the names and numbers of support groups, and they'll do things like throw showers for them, have support groups. There's groups for when you're a single mom. There's groups for the dads. And basically what they've found is, I think it's like 80% end up deciding not to abort because they have been connected into a group that gives them support, does not shame them, helps them financially, helps them find jobs, helps them find community, takes away the shame and the guilt, and gives them resources. And that kind of leads me to how we talk about this stuff. Jesus never uses shame and never uses guilt. Jesus Christ loves anyone and everyone who has had an abortion and wants to be with you, wants to walk with you. If you have had one, forgives you. All you have to do is just go to him and ask for that forgiveness. And it grieves me to see so many Christians celebrating and being unkind and feeding into more shame and guilt for women and giving the potentially pregnant or the currently pregnant less hope. I think that's just grievous. Like, my first reaction on Friday was not, oh, this is a great victory. It was, there's so much more work to do now. Reagan had been looking at starting this organization for a week or two before that. Went to the Gospel Coalition conference here in Indianapolis and met them. And she was a single mom and came from a religious background and did not think that she would have the support. The initial conversation didn't go well, but her family was there for her in the end. But man, she identifies so much with women who are in that situation, and this is something that she just really wants to engage in. And the decision on, like, before Friday was something she was doing, and after Friday, it's something we're doing. We're just trying to get a church to work with us and get it going. Like, the Christian response to this should be that Jesus loves anyone and everyone, and that no matter what situation you're in, we're here to help you. Matt Chandler just put it so much better in his sermon, and I'd love for you to go listen to that, because it was the one that I'm poorly preaching that I wish everybody else could hear, because it's the right Christian perspective. Christians love to prattle on about being persecuted for their beliefs. Most of you are being persecuted because you're assholes. You're not being persecuted for standing up for the truth. You're being persecuted because you're being a dick. And Jesus doesn't like it. Like, have some compassion for people, just for the wreckage. Like, this isn't going well, and I'm not putting all my words in the right places. There's just so much. Like, I'm so privileged and blessed to have the life that I have, to like be sitting here in my backyard safely with my big green egg, cooking a chicken, with a wife that loves me, a beautiful daughter, enough money to support myself, people like you to listen to me. I have it so good. And like, I have felt increasingly over the last 2 years the weight of that privilege. Like, what am I really doing with this audience, and what am I really doing with this podcast? Like, bitching about the government? Who gives a shit? Like, Roe v. Wade is overturned. There's nothing we can do about it at this point. All we can do is just try to help our neighbors who are in trouble. just the wreckage that when you talk to people who work in the foster care industry, or you talk to people who work in CPS, or like today I did an interview with a domestic violence group. It's so easy for those of us who sit in these kind of privileged positions to just forget the hopelessness that so many people live in. And as a libertarian, like, I kind of don't care about the law anymore, because I don't really think I can change whether or not Roe is overturned or not. I mean, I guess there are people who made that happen over a 50-year long haul. Like, good for you. I think you can make a big impact locally. But as we sort of move further into oligarchy, the thing that libertarians, that Christians, that people of privilege can do is to ease the suffering of other people. And this to me is just like the prime example of it. You know, women who are in a position where it's hopeless, they don't have the financial means, they don't have the family means, they don't have the community support, they don't have the money to pay for the actual birth. You know, they may not know how to get onto state Medicare, for instance. And you're damn right, get on state Medicare. Like, use the systems that are there if you are in a hopeless situation. I'm not hardcore in that. Like, if you are in a position where you have to get health insurance for your family and you go on state insurance, then you should do it. You have to protect your family first and foremost, and taking from the government what you have paid into is perfectly acceptable to me. You know, when you're in a scared, vulnerable position, many people will take advantage of you. And I just know there's so many good people in this audience that aren't going to do that, and are going to start to work in their circles to make it like Reagan and I waited until we were married to have sex. I am 38, she is 28. She has a kid. We are both divorced. It didn't make any sense to anybody. It didn't really make sense to us a lot of the time. But like, if you say you believe something, you've got to live it out. And I will say that waiting until marriage for us, even though it was silly, was such a blessing to us in so many ways. To live out God's vision of sexual purity was good. And we did that because we had made so many mistakes before. People make mistakes, and there isn't anybody that isn't going to make a mistake. And yeah, hate the sin, love the sinner. But I just think so many people miss getting past the hating the sin part. And I've seen so much of it over the last few weeks. As this leak came out, and then as this came down. And I just think the world is cruel, and the world is hard, especially on people who are vulnerable, feeling hopeless. And our job is to help ease those burdens. So, you know, as we move forward in a post-Roe world, we're going to talk about all the legalities. We're going to flesh some of this out. I'm going to talk to some different people about some of this stuff over the coming weeks. But I just want you to try to think about who is on the other end of your words, and think about the work that now must be done, especially in red states. Like, Christians have earned the rap of being uncaring. Of course, the stories of the Fort Lauderdale foster care systems being emptied out because of churches are never told. That stuff's there, but that's like Fort Lauderdale. What about the other 10,000 cities in this country? You know, like, everybody's looking at Christians right now going, all right, you won. What are you going to do? How are you going to take care of these women and these children? Do you really care about life? now's the time to prove that you do. So I would just think that if you got this far in the podcast, you are actually a Christian, you are actually pro-life. And even if you're not, I just encourage you to start serving the people in your circle. Find a place to help. Your tweets aren't worth a damn. Your pride flags, your signs for Black Lives Matters, your memes opposing the left, none of that matters. None of that does anything. None of that really helps. What helps is building a meaningful, lasting relationship with somebody that needs help. So find that person. They're in your circle right now. They're hurting. They need help. So I don't know if this was a good episode. I don't know if I said anything of value. I don't know if you like this format. I don't even know if this recorded. But I feel better kind of unburdening myself and getting things off my chest. So, if you love it or hate it, let me know. Be nice. Otherwise, I'll just block you. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. I'm going to check the chicken. Let's see if the skin is... I put honey and thyme. Oh, it is completely burnt. Oh, I must have talked so long. It is so burnt. Oh, man. How long was this episode? Oh, my God. It just popped like... Oh, I'm so stupid.